Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us today. This is an overview of iPlatform. I'm Mike Schwartz, and I appreciate you taking the time to learn a little bit more about this tool. iPlatform is a public system, public website that's part of the Department of Education's website. It is available for both educators, teachers, folks like yourself who might be working with special education teams in schools, as well as just the general public. It is part of an effort that was championed by the commissioner of the department, with a focus on really trying to make data as public and accessible as possible, data about schools and districts, so that we can all collectively work together to try to improve education for the students in New Hampshire. It's been available for a few years now, and it's constantly getting added to and expanded on. I also want to kind of recognize Caitlin Davis. She's the director of the division that's oversees iPlatform, and then Dina Raybuck is also one of the lead developers on the tool. So there's been a lot of work done behind the scenes to get this in place for everybody. But we hope you'll find this is a valuable tool. I'm joined with Heather Jenkins, who is also part of our team working with the department. And I'm going to turn it over to Heather. I guess real briefly before I do that, I'll just give you some logistics. In terms of the webinar itself, please, we have folks muted, but if you want to say something, you feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute you. Please use the Q&A section of the Zoom screen and ask any questions, and we'll be watching those throughout the presentation. I'll be watching those as Heather presents to us. And then we will also send you an email following up to get both a survey of the results of the presentation. We certainly welcome your feedback and appreciate it. We use it to make changes as we go forward. So please, offer us any thoughts, and we'll be sending you a link to the presentation itself, as well as a certificate for PD hours for those who need that. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Heather, and appreciate you all participating.
Hi, everybody. Thanks again for coming. This is our agenda for the day that we have. We're going to do an overview of iPlatform, and then we're going to talk about 3 of the different areas of iPlatform. We're going to talk about iReport, iExplore, and iAchieve, and then we're going to go through a couple of scenarios. I'm going to turn my video off here. I just wanted everybody to put a name to a face here, give you a little bit more room on your screen, and we'll get right to it. So overall, for iPlatform, the data that you're able to take a look at is for all schools in New Hampshire. It is for charter schools. It's for all of the different entities in our school, in our state. I don't know what is happening. I'm already going all over. All right. So first and foremost, we collect the data. We, meaning the state, collects the data, and that data is also part of that is the assessment data that we have. So you can see the assessment schedule for the Department of Education. We get all of that data, and then that data is analyzed, and school performance is taken into consideration. And a lot of the different areas where the data is on the New Hampshire Department of Education sites is put into iPlatform in a way that's accessible for you all, so you're able to see the information. There are definitely different areas that we get the data from, and that is put into iPlatform. And so some of this might be I4C and places like that. So if for some reason you cannot view that data and you're trying to look at it in a different way, that's where you might work with your superintendent or somebody in your district to be able to give you access to that data. What we're talking about today, though, is completely public. You will be able to look at your data and anybody else's data around the state for everything that we're talking about today. For iPlatform, again, these are the components that we're going to be looking at. We're going to look at iReport and just some general information about iReport, and then iExplore and iAchieve. So this is an overall snapshot of them all. One thing that we did want to point out specifically for you folks, because this is for our special education folks today, and that's our focus, is that you are going to be able to look at specific special education indicators on some of these, and specifically for your IDEA and all of that, you can look at your subgroups, and we're going to show you how to do that today. For iPlatform, this is what the iPlatform site looks like. You can Google iPlatform, or we put the link right in here. So if you get the slides, you can click right on that link as well. It's really pretty easy to just Google the iPlatform. It's the first thing that shows up. Going into our first section, iReport. As we're on the iPlatform website, you're going to click on iReport. You can see right here, it says new 2023 data. I just want to point out that all the data that you are looking for or looking at right now, and that's available on iPlatform, iReport, iExplore, iAchieve that we're talking about today, the newest data we have is from last spring. The data for 2024 is going to be able to be looked at and verified and everything in September, and should be up, we're hoping, late September for the new 2024 data, possibly beginning of October, but they're going to try to get that up as soon as possible. So I don't want you to be confused about the data that you're seeing. Nothing from this particular spring. If you've completed your assessments, it's not going to be uploaded in there until the early fall. As we're looking at iReport, it will bring you to a page that looks like this, and you're able to choose a specific school or district. You can also select a year. So if you did want to see something historical, you can look at historical data as well. You can choose a specific town, and then as you're viewing the report, you're going to get something that looks like this. At the top here, these are all of the tabs that are available within iReport. So you can look at any one of these tabs. We're going to go through a few of them. And then you can also, up at the top, you can go, if you wanted to look at a different school or you wanted to go back to the search, you could do that. If you were looking at a district, you could see the schools within the district. You could compare entities if you wanted to, and you could download. We're going to talk about a couple of those things. Up here again is that school year. We said 2023, but you can toggle between school years as well. And then as we're moving through the tabs, the first one was overview. This is the achievement tab for iReport. Just a general overview of this. What you're going to see here, if we're looking at specific proficiency right now, we're looking overall proficiency. And down at the bottom here, this ELA proficiency, your level 3 and level 4 are combined for your overall proficiency. So I just wanted to point out that these two, same thing for math. If we were to combine these two here, that's going into your overall proficiency. If you are looking at this achievement tab, you can also look at any of the information here. So you can click on this right now. This is open, and you can see your subgroup information for ELA proficiency. So you can see right here, you've got students with disability, and this is what their proficiency is. And then this is the students without disability. If you want to also look at English language learners, whatever it is, anytime that you click on one of these, it pops out and you can see subgroup results. So I'll go live and you can kind of see that as well. But on the achievement tab as well, I wanted to talk a little bit about this target. This is the same for every single school or district in the state. This is what the state is hoping to see for achievement scores. It is not the state average. So the state deems where they would like people to be, and then that target is sort of a static target for the year. And you can see whichever district is and how they compare to what the target is. If you're looking for the state average, it's over here on the right-hand side. And you can see here that for ELA proficiency, this is the state of New Hampshire. This is the Memorial School in Bedford. You can see the colors, and then you can see the district. One of the things about all of these iPlatform applications is the colors are consistent. So when you're looking at ELA, it's going to be this reddish pink. Then it's going to be, for math, it's going to be the blue, science is green. And then you'll see state of New Hampshire, and then the district and the town. It's always going to be green for state of New Hampshire, district is blue, and the particular school is going to be, or town school here is going to be yellow.
Heather, there was a question on the prior slide about what there were two numbers next to the flyout for special education. I think that might be the same answer that you just gave.
Okay, let me see. So for this here,
Yeah.
so this is the target. And then this is where they are. So I believe that this is, what the target is for each one of them.
Yeah, so the state had to come up with targets for the U.S. Department of Education, both for overall students, that's a 64% on the left, for example, for ELA, and they also had to come up with targets for each subgroup, so 28% for special education students, for example. And those targets change each year; they get a little bit larger each year.
Okay. All right, I'll get back to here. Okay. All right, so for this next one, we're on the growth tab here. Wanted to give you a little bit of information about growth here. So growth is, I always try to explain this, and I do it a little bit of justice, but not the whole thing. So when we're talking about a growth comparison, what happens is that students from year to year are compared to their peers who score similarly. So if we're looking at a very sort of easy example, if I were to look at somebody in 2022 and they scored a level 2 and they had a specific scaled score, they are looking at that particular student's growth the next year is based off of how they did in comparison to those peers from the year before, and also years prior to that as well. But it's they create sort of a cohort, and growth is figured out according to that particular cohort from year to year. So they are compared to students with like achievement scores. And that's how growth is figured out from year to year. You can also view growth for a specific subgroup. So we can see here for growth, students with disabilities, you can see what that growth is for ELA and math. Anything above 50% or higher indicates that that student is scoring higher than those students that were in their peer group for the previous year. So you want to see something above 50% or more. If you looked at the state of New Hampshire, their growth for all you will always see is 50% because it's an average of everything. But for each district, you can kind of see how your students are doing growth-wise compared to their peers as well. For iReport, for you folks specifically, this IDEA tab, right now we have the indicator for education environment here. We've chosen that. And so this is telling you here for this happens to be Conway that we used. You can see for Conway over the last 3 years, those special ed students that are placed in the regular environment, what percentage it is compared to the state. So this is interesting for you to see any of these indicators for you compared to what the state averages are. They are a district level, so you're looking at it as a whole district. And then right now we're looking at placement for school age students here, but you can look at any of these indicators as well. For iReport, if we're looking at here, I want to do some downloading and I want the information that I'm seeing to be able to be printed. You've got a couple of different ways that you can print them as PDFs, and then you've also got some Excel or CSV files. So if we look at the summary report here, or the detailed report, this one's a summary. This gives you sort of a snapshot of the general information that you have for your particular school or district. And then the detailed report is that, plus it's got all your information here about all the subgroups. And this is where you'd be able to find the special education information and so on for that. I would recommend here, if you're looking for specific information, mostly about your special ed population, you might be better served to download it to Excel and delete all the columns that you don't want to see, rather than printing out that detailed report that could be pages long. So if we're looking at the information for these, this is the data that you can do. This is for a selected school. So this has all the data. And then again, you could get rid of or do whatever you wanted to with the data in there if you wanted to get rid of some of it. This is the all data for multiple entities. So you could do your school compared to other schools, or if you have, let's say, 3 elementary schools in your district, you could look at all 3 compared to one another. And then this is all schools in a district. You would choose the district here, and then you would be able to see all schools in that district, and it would give you the information there. And again, since you're downloading it, you would be able to keep whatever information you wanted or get rid of other information. Right now, I'd like to go live into iReport just so that you can see it and not have to just look at screenshots. Again, I can type in iPlatform. This is what comes up. I'm gonna click right here. And here's our iPlatform. I want to go right into iReport here. And as I'm in iReport, it automatically defaults to the overview tab, and you can see where your overall student achievement is. All of these things you can hover on and see general information. There's a lot of little pop-ups that come up. Again, color scheme you'll see is pretty consistent throughout. First thing I want to look at here is you can go look and you can see, I think it's interesting specifically for special ed to take a peek at your profile, because here it has students, the percentage of students with disabilities or students without. Right now, what happened when I chose iReport is there's something that we're trying to fix. It went right into a Crosby Kennett Middle School. It happens to be the first one, unfortunately for them, that's on the school list. Typically, what's going to happen when you click on iReport is you're going to see this, and then you're able to choose whatever school or district that you would like to take a look at. So if I wanted to look at Allenstown Elementary, I could say view the report for that. So you're able to kind of look at it. You can choose by town. So the search is pretty self-explanatory there, but then it will open up for whatever particular town or district that you have. But the profile, like I said, for special ed is something that might be helpful for you to see what percentage of students with disabilities you have compared to students without, economically disadvantaged. It's just a profile of your particular, that particular school or district that you choose. The achievement tab here, this is where we were looking at the overall achievement levels. Any of these here that have an arrow or a pop out, you click on it and it will give you that general information. This is where you can see the students with disabilities and how they're performing. If you are wanting to see for ELA, this is open. Just know these stay open until you click them again. You have to click to close it. If not, they start to open on top of one another or behind one another. So you just want to, if you're trying to not have your screen be too crowded, you can close it just by clicking it again. This is again information about how students are performing. I'd like this information here where you can see the different information for each grade level. and what the proficiency is. This, however, is not necessarily breaking out students with disabilities. I can show you a little bit better place maybe to find that in a different area. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But you get the same thing here with the student achievement levels. You can see here that you've got, let me just scroll up just a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. You can see the specific number of students in the state. You can also click on this and you can see your students with disabilities as well. What this tells you is how many students you have that are in a particular band, whether they're level 1, 2, 3, or 4. Again, to close it, I'm just going to click on that.
There was a question on the profile page about it showed like the percentage of students with disabilities. I think it was like 20% or something, or 19. There's just a question about where that data came from. And so I can answer that. In the data for identifying students as IEP all come from the Nessus system. So the department receives a nightly feed from Nessus that identifies anybody who's special ed. And then these numbers basically represent anybody who is identified. I believe it's for special education anytime during the year. So for some reason their IEP, they finished their IEP in March, they're still counted as IEP for that year. But that's where those numbers come from. And then that information again from Nessus of whether you're on an IEP or not is used for all those other disaggregates like Heather was showing us a minute ago, where it shows you the percentage of students who are proficient who are on an IEP.
Great, thank you. The other, there's a couple more tabs I just want to go through quickly. This next one is that growth tab. So we were able to see that. You can see right on here that growth for this particular district and what they have right here. This is a good sort of thing for you all to see too. It has an N here. So Mike, if I'm not mistaken, this N with the asterisk means that there's not enough students to report off of. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Yep. It was one of the things that we showed on the screen that I didn't really talk about. If there's a low number of students, it will not necessarily give you the information because it makes it so that because there's such a such a low number of students, is it, I think 10 or less, they won't give you the actual information because it's, what do they call that, Mike? It's less than 10%, so it's too easy to identify who the students are.
Yeah, so the federal government requires that, and that all the public data is make sure that we can identify individual students. So it's called low N size. You suppress the data, and so for New Hampshire, like Heather said, if it's less than 11 students, then that data will frequently get suppressed. It depends on what the information is. If you're just talking about enrollment counts, then it might be shown with smaller numbers. But if you're looking at actual results, like from an assessment test, that's when you'll see these things suppressed.
Great. The last tab I want to show you is that IDEA tab that we had talked about. And this particular one, we need to look at this as a district. So if I were to go back to the search here, or I could look at the school list, I don't have to go back to the search. I could say the district for Allenstown. It gives me the actual district here. This is going to stay open, so I can close this here. And then right now the indicator is graduation rate that's chosen. Mike and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. If I chose dropout rate here, even though it shows both of these here, it's the last one that I chose. So that the indicator 1 wasn't even showing, it's just showing me dropout rate right now. And this tells you basically that Allenstown, the district, they only have an elementary school, so it's the dropout rate isn't going to be, I could do suspension and expulsion, and now you can kind of see. Oh, I picked a different one, assessment performance. You can see, and then you'll be able to see what that looks like over time. Okay. Unless there's any other questions, I'm going to move on and we'll continue kind of making our way through. For iReport, what we did here too is we put just some general scenarios that you might want to take a peek at, or ways that you can look at iReport. If you share these slides with other people, these might be things that they could just keep in mind as they're in iReport, and what the different sections are and where you might find things. So I'll keep going, and Mike, you just feed me the questions if there are any. We're going to move into iExplore. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of iExplore.
Heather, as
Again,
you get to that, I just want to mention one more thing about that suppression of data where it was a star N. You don't have to go back, but I was just going to talk about it. I do want to point out, Heather mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that there is an I4C report. So I4C is the system that your schools use to upload data. And there is a report that just superintendents have access to that has all this information that kind of feeds this. And it's in a spreadsheet format for all your student assessment results. And that is not suppressed. So if there is some information you're trying to find out how maybe your students might have done, and you're a small school, there might be some more information available in that spreadsheet. So if that's an issue, reach out to us and I can help you understand how to get to that spreadsheet.
great. Perfect. All right. Now we're on the iPlatform. We're going to go into iExplore. Here's some just general information about iExplore. We're looking at the Explore tab right here. And on this Explore tab, this is, we've got some indicator information up at the top. Right now, anything that we're seeing sort of down here is we've got the average class size on the left right here, and it's all, any indicator that we choose here is going to be looking at it in comparison to proficiency in math and ELA. We can't change that. So we've got lots of indicators here. We've got all different areas of indicators, and then we've got all the indicators listed here. The screenshot that I have doesn't go all the way down. There's a few more indicators down at the bottom. One of them is students with disabilities. So you could always choose students with disabilities for an indicator and look at the information for that. So again, we're looking at proficiency in ELA and math and the percentage of proficiency. And what this does is it sees if there's some sort of comparison. There's something called a Pearson R value. And so that's telling you whether there might be a correlation between two things. So a correlation right now between average class size and proficiency in ELA and math. For the Pearson R value, it's telling you what the probability of a correlation is. A value of 0.8 to 1, so 0.8 through 1 is a positive correlation. Anything below a 0.5 is a really pretty weak correlation. You can see here 0.07, a really weak correlation. But we also want to point out that you might be seeing something that's, a 0.8 or higher, but that does not necessarily mean that one indicator is causing another thing to happen. So you might see that there's a correlation maybe between, we've looked at it a lot, between average class size and ELA and math proficiency. There actually is not a high probability of a correlation. The correlation, as you can see, is right on the right-hand side here. Pearson R value is really low, but let's say this was a 0.81 or whatever, 0.85. And we would look at that and we would say, wow, there's a positive correlation there, but that does not equal the fact that a larger class size or a smaller class size is going to produce any better results than others. It just means you might want to look into it more, but there could be a multitude of other factors that are involved in that. The next one I want to look at here is the Discover tab. This here, you're able to choose the indicator. So for the Explore tab, it was always going to be looked at in comparison to ELA and math proficiency. But here you can select any indicator that you want for the x-axis and the y-axis. So you can choose a couple of different indicators and see if there's a specific correlation between them. You can also look on the right-hand side and you can choose a year. You can look at things from a district level. You might want to take a look at a specific region, depending on which region you're in, or school type, maybe just elementary schools, or maybe just secondary schools, whatever, however you want to look at that, you can kind of parse out the information for what you want to see there. This next tab, the Compare tab, this is allowing you to take a look at, again, any of the indicators that we have here. So right here, now we're looking at average class size, and we're looking at the average class size for Abbott Downing School and the Ackworth Elementary School. That's the default that's showing up here. And it's giving you all of the different indicators here. I could scroll down on this and you would be able to see those particular two schools compared to each other. I'll give you a little bit more information on that when we go in live, but this can be an interesting way to be able to look at your school compared to another school that you feel like is either similar or is in your district or what have you. Again, the categories can be chosen and you have specific indicators that you can choose as well. Right now, again, we're looking at Abbott Downing and Ackworth, but you can choose them from anything on the list there, and you're seeing those two schools comparison for the last 3 years. So for iExplore, we are going to come out of here. There we go. I'm going to go backwards here and I'm going to go right here and I'm going to go into iExplore. So for iExplore, what happens here is this is general information about a lot of different New Hampshire schools and districts. So if we're looking at the information here, we can see there's different indicators on the left-hand side. If I choose an indicator on the left-hand side, like if I look at let's go look at profile, then what happens is if I apply this, it will only show me those that are in that particular in profile. If I don't choose a category here and I apply it, then when I choose the indicator name, it will give me everything in the list. I tend to just look at it this way and I find what I need, but if you want to be able to kind of get the information narrowed down a little bit, you can. So if I choose students with disabilities, right? So students with disabilities, and then you've got ELA and math proficiency. So what we have here is what's happening is on the left-hand side, you've got the percentage of students with disabilities, and then you've got that compared to their math and ELA scores. And then you've got the top 25%, middle, and low 25%. If I wanted to narrow this down and say, okay, I would like to look at a specific region. We talked about this. This isn't quite done yet. Usually what's going to happen here is we're going to be able to choose some indicators for a specific region. Excuse me.
I think if you choose school, you got to choose school right now.
And they will be able to use district at some point, correct?
Correct. Yeah, that's a fix that's going to go in place right now. It's only with the school.
Okay. And then, so the region here, like if I'm in the southeast here, I could say I would like to see this for the southeast. And then these are the schools in the southeast region, and I can take a peek. We can look at the Pearson R value. And then down here, here's all the schools that are listed for the southeast. If I wanted to put them in order, it's not really intuitive, but in between my 20 and 30%, here's where I can go through and I can click on this and it will go from highest to lowest for the percentages, and then you can see from lowest to highest. So you can take a look at this and see if there's any sort of correlation between the two. The next one I want to show you here is the compare. If you're looking at the compare here, I can look again if I want to choose my students with disabilities. I could choose any specific schools or districts that I wanted to. So if I wanted to look at the Amherst district compared to the Barnstead district, you can see that Barnstead is the one in the gray, Amherst is the one in the blue. And then you can scroll down here and you can start seeing all the different information and compare those particular schools as well. And you can see the enrollment, all of that. And then the last one that I would like to show you for iExplore is this Discover tab. So if we're looking at this Discover tab, we can again choose any indicators that we want. What ends up happening here is that right now the growth in ELA or math is what's open. I could also open any of these. So if I wanted to see something like, let's say, let's go with proficiency in ELA. And then on my x-axis, you could take a look at maybe if I wanted to see a specific students with disabilities. I could see here the general information. I gotta close these. And then you can see the Pearson R value here, and then I'm able to see just the general information. The cool thing about this one here too is that this gives me my particular the school that I'm hovering over, and it gives me all the information on that particular school. So you can start to see, okay, where are these particular schools and how are their how is all of their particular indicators, what does it look like for them? So this is, again, we're looking at our proficiency in ELA and the students with disabilities and how they're performing, or number of students that they're performing, what number of students compared to the performance over here. All right, any other questions? I want to go back into here. For iExplore, again, here are some of the scenarios that we were looking at and what you might be able to see on each particular tab. And I will move on here. And we're going to go into iAchieve. iAchieve is, again, we're right on that iPlatform. We're going to choose iAchieve. This is just talking about the navigation of iAchieve. Here's what the overall screen looks like. It defaults to the state of New Hampshire. You're able to search for your school or district in the search area as well. But something pretty cool on this page and in iAchieve in general is that you're able to take a look at and show filters. So for you specifically as special educators, it's cool. Once you choose that show filters, it will bring up the top of the screen like this. You can choose specific grades. You can do whatever you would like for that. But if you choose subgroup and then you choose students with disabilities, then what happens is everything that's shown on the screen, so now assessment participation is now all showing just students with disabilities. So you can see your particular data for just your specific student population. So as we kind of go through this, if we're looking at these tabs, as we look through this for the assessment and participation tab, we can see here our participation rates. So for participation rate, It's only gonna show the FAY or full academic year students, so they need to have been in your district for 90% or more of the year for them to count for your participation or count against your participation. The federal target for participation is 95%. So especially since I'm talking to special education folks, when I'm on site or talking to folks out in schools and in districts, there is a little bit of a misunderstanding about students specifically on IEPs. Obviously, if they're really not able to access the New Hampshire SAS assessments or things like that, then they're going to be taking a DLM. But for those students who are on IEPs or have any sort of disabilities, as much as possible, you do want them taking this assessment. We have quite a few schools out there that don't understand that federal target of 95% participation. And if you have less than 95% participation, then you get not necessarily aligned with a specific student, but the way I explain it is if you have 100 students and you only have 90 students take the assessment, a lot of times it is those special ed kids that sometimes are sort of their parents or they're sort of recommended maybe they not take it because they're having a hard time with that particular assessment. So if you've got only 90 students taking it, that means for your overall score for accountability that you will be getting 5 zeros for your specific accountability measures for achievement. So I always tell folks, like, I know that, you might have students who, might not be scoring very well, but their score is better than a 0 if you're going to fall below that federal target for participation rate. Again, participation rate is full academic year, and for those students who aren't taking the DLM. So for this next tab, I want to talk about proficiency and growth. As we're looking at this particular area, we can see the overall proficiency here. You can see what the target is. You can see for ELA and math. You can see, again, we're looking at the state of New Hampshire, so you can see the growth targets here. You can also, again, that 50% or more means that they're making better than average growth or making growth faster than students that were their peers in the prior year and before. Down on the bottom here, you will also see the assessment proficiency and the growth over time. I really like this particular screen. I'm going to show it a little bit closer here. So it follows a cohort of students over multiple years, and you start to see this is ELA proficiency, and you kind of look diagonally to see if this particular cohort of students is increasing in their proficiency or number of students proficient. And you can do the same thing for that growth. On the right-hand side, again, we're looking at the state of New Hampshire, so it's 50, but you could look for your particular school as well and see how growth is doing over time. For the achievement levels here on this tab, you're also able to see the number or the percentage of students that are at each particular achievement level. When I go live here, I'm going to show you a couple cool things with the pop-ups as well, so you can see achievement levels and growth, specifically growth for each level as well, so you can see how students are doing with that. And then this is the growth over time, so this is the bottom of the screen. And you can see here where the students from level 1, 2, 3, and 4 have been over time as well for the last years that they've taken the assessment. It will start to look even better when we get further along and the lines don't have this gap for the year that the students didn't take the assessment.
Someone's
Yep.
asking if you can do that for the special ed students, or is this just for all students?
I think we can do that for special ed, but we'll test that when I get in live. And we'll make sure that we can see that. The last one is the ESSA indicators. So as we're looking at this, you can see how your school is doing. And then you can also see all of those indicators to see where you fall. And if you aren't in good standing, you might be able to see a little bit of why. Maybe it's a subgroup. And so we'll talk a little bit about that when I go live as well. So let's do it. If I'm here, I'm looking again, I'm going to go right into I Achieve. And the first thing I'm going to do here, just so that we can look at it all in, in with the filter for our special ed subgroup, I'm going to click subgroup here. And I'm going to choose students with disabilities, and we'll kind of go through this whole thing just with this and make sure that we're seeing the information properly. So this first one, again, are participation rates. So you can see here, as we're looking at this, you can start looking at the participation rates. You can see here with students with disabilities, this is showing specifically there's 86%. But then you can also see like economically disadvantaged. So all those pop-ups are still there, but this is giving you the overall participation rate for students with disabilities. So you can see here, if I were to take off this indicator of students with disabilities, for the state, I just know overall that the participation rates are higher for the overall state than they are right now for students with disabilities. You have 14% of students with disabilities opting out and not taking the assessment. And those are students who do not necessarily qualify for the DLM. So it's not adding the kids for DLM in there. This is the full academic year with students with disabilities. That's also something that Mike was talking about, that I believe that includes anybody who was on an IEP at any point during the school year. And it gives you all the general information here. For the proficiency and growth, so we're looking here, you can see that the overall proficiency for students with disabilities and is 16%. The target was 28%. Math is 13%, target was 19.1. Not sure why there wasn't a target for science. And growth won't be for science anyway, because they don't take it, they take it in grades 5, 8, and 11, so we don't have multiple years for that. So you can see the overall growth. If I click on this, I kind of like this because it's showing you the growth for the last couple of years, so you can see if students are doing better or not over time. On the bottom here, you can see if you're looking, this is again the whole state. I could choose a specific district, but for the state in general, we're looking, across here, and we're saying, so kids in grade 3, they were 16% proficient, then 18, then 16, then 18. So they tend to be going sort of back and forth. So you can follow a cohort of students and see how they've done. And then you can also see for growth. You have 2 COVID years here, even though they only had 1 COVID year for taking the assessment because they could not do growth because they didn't take the test for 2 years in a row here. So it starts again here. So you can start to see what the growth is for ELA and math. And then we've got some science here as well.
And I'll just point out like that, those graphs there at the bottom are really valuable, especially when you're looking at a district. And, frequently we're looking at the state. So you'll typically see, as Heather just pointed out, you might see that things are fairly static, like maybe they go up a little bit or they go up and then back down a little bit. But frequently when you're looking at your own district, you may have a cohort of students that you do see one specific cohort is really having troubles there along that diagonal that she was showing us before. They've been struggling for several years. So Definitely encourage you to take a look at this and see if there's been any change, for example, in your IEP population and their performance, or whether there's one cohort of IEP students, that special education students, who might be struggling year after year if you look at the diagonal. So definitely a good thing to take a look at.
Thanks, Mike. The next one is achievement levels. So as we're looking at achievement levels, this is the one that we were hoping was still going to be showing for our filters. And I can tell you it definitely is showing with the filters here. So achievement levels for ELA, you can see level 1, level 2, 3, and 4 for ELA math and science. What I really like about the hovering portion of this is if we look at this 3 here, we can see for results for the prior year. So right now there's 13% of special ed students in the state who have scored a level 3. Out of those students, it's hard for me to, I was going to try to move my pointer, but you can see 12.74% of them the year prior were a level 1. So they moved up 2 levels. 24.38 were level 2s. Almost 30% were level 3s and stayed there. 4.5% were level 4s that moved down to level 3. And then for some of those kids, 24.8 of them were not required to test or did not test. You can kind of see what those are. I just like to see this, not just for special ed, but just in general. Where are kids that are in level 2? Where did they come from? And so it can be helpful for that. Same thing here with the growth. You can see the growth percents for each particular level. And then we're looking here for the level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. And you can see there must not have been here anybody with the level 3 or level 4 achievement for the year prior for math. But you can see some ELA, and you can just sort of see how they're doing over time, and you can see all the different subgroups as well. This last one here is the ESSA indicators. This is telling you, because I'm in the state of New Hampshire, I can't necessarily do it. So we're going to go with Allenstown Elementary, just because they're one of the first ones on the list. Right now, they are additional targeted support and improvement, which means that there's one or more indicators. Usually this one, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, is a subgroup or a special population that is getting them on this particular list. But it doesn't necessarily mean students with disabilities, or it could be their white population, or it could be whatever it is. It's just a specific subgroup of students. You can see there. Go ahead, Mike. Were you going to say something?
I'm sorry. I was going to say, yeah, by and large, most schools are ATS. It is because of their special education population in New Hampshire.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can start to see for achievement here, you can see all the different, I'm going to scroll up so that you can see a little bit more of that. You can see the students with disabilities and how their scores are compared to others. You can see for growth, same thing. You can take a look at their growth measures. This one, I think, is the one that's sort of all telling, is the achievement, because it's achievement or growth that's getting folks. I'm not loving the way that that's okay. Achievement or growth is typically what is the issue for folks getting on this CSI, ATSI, or TSI list. All right. I'm going to move on. We've got a couple of scenarios that we were going to go through. If you have any questions, again, just pop them in the chat, or you can even stay on and Mike and I can answer them at the end. So this is just navigating iAchieve, telling you what each particular tab is taking a look at and what you might be able to do with each one of those tabs. So I wanted to go in, we have 3 different scenarios today. I wanted to go into the scenarios. I was going to show you possibly some of the information. I've also got the screenshots of the answers, but One of the things that we like to do is show you an application. So if we're looking at this first scenario, we're looking at students who have been struggling with performance on the state assessment. You are specifically for your special ed population. So we're looking at, you have a relatively small school. You're looking at schools maybe in the North Country and a high number of special education students. So you want to see maybe people who have at least 20% of their students with disabilities. And what you might be doing is trying to compare yourselves or see if there's anybody who's doing better that you might be able to say, okay, what are they doing? Maybe you can reach out to them, or maybe you know folks in a neighboring district and they maybe they're doing something that would be helpful. So it allows you to kind of open up those conversations. So for this, I'm going to go right to the screenshot only because I'm looking at the time here. You would go into iExplore, and this is one of those interesting tools here, this search tool. So I was able to choose proficiency in math. I was able to choose students with disabilities. And I basically said I wanted this to be 20% or higher. So I typed in the 20% here, or you can use this little sort of tool that goes from left to right. I also looked at total enrollment and said I wanted 325 or less. And so I'm able to see all of this information here. And right now it is sorted by schools with the highest proficiency in math down to the lowest. And then you can see their percentage of special ed and then their number of students. I chose the North Country here, and I choose 2023. So you're able to look at any of the indicators here. You don't necessarily just need to use these. You could do ELA. You could do any sort of the information. You could do class size, average class size, whatever you wanted to do for these particular indicators. For scenario 2, you're curious about your student proficiency and growth for students with disabilities in your school. You'd like to see a snapshot for each grade level over the last few years. You would also like to compare math, ELA, and science to see if proficiency and growth are similar. Where should you look? This is where we were just at with the iAchieve. We were able to, again, choose the subgroup and the students with disabilities. We're able to see the proficiency and growth here. And you can also see how they're doing over time. So this is your cohorts and how they're doing over time. The last scenario that we're looking at is you're looking to see the level of parent involvement for students with disabilities. You wonder if your district, how it compares to the state. Like, do you have really good parent involvement or not? And where would you see it? We're looking here on iReport. We're looking in this IDEA tab. This is where we're able to choose all the different indicators here, and we chose parent involvement. So for Conway, they had not very much parent involvement, but here, or not probably enough students possibly there as well. And then in 2023, they have really good parent involvement compared to the state specifically. We have also on the slide deck here some helpful hints on how to expand and shrink and do all of that, reminding you that you're making sure you're choosing the right year. There's iGlossary. It can give you a little bit of information about some of the terminology. And the more you're kind of in iPlatform and the different portions of iPlatform, you're going to get more and more well-versed with what you can see. Just know though, I'm going to bring it right up here. Any of the information that you have questions about, you can reach out to any of us for this. Email us. You've got some information here if you need to make a phone call or what have you. We appreciate your time. Sorry for kind of rushing through those scenarios. Stay on if you need any questions answered. And other than that, thank you so much for coming today.